And thank you so much for watching us today. If you've been watching or following our page, you know that once a month we do a meeting to talk about what's going on mental health wise in our community. And we call it our town hall series, or better known as our Mindful Minute series. And earlier this year, we started talking about kind of soothing your soul, and we all needed that refreshing. And so we've had sessions on spirituality and other things. And today, because May is Mental Health Awareness Month, we're going to have a candid conversation with some mental health providers from our organization and from around the state. And they're going to talk to us today about mental health. And so I encourage you that if you are watching us live, please feel free to drop some questions in our comments, and I will give those to our panelists today. And please share and like this video, because we're going to have jewels being dropped, gems are being dropped by these individuals who are on the panel with me. So I'm Tiffany Haynes, and I get the pleasure of just having to moderate today. So I'm just going to sit back and take in and soak in all of the great things that we're going to hear today. But I'm sure you want to meet our panelists. And so I'm going to have each one of them introduce themselves. And so we're going to start with Kyla Holmes.
Hello, thank you so much, Tiffany, for moderating for tonight. So yes, my name is Kyla Holmes, and I'm a clinical psychologist here in the Little Rock / North Little Rock area. I predominantly work with individuals ages about 6 to 25, so kids through young adults, working with a range of difficulties, behavior, trauma, anxiety, depression, those types of difficulties. And I also spend the other half of my time, because I do that half of my time, and then the other half of my time I spend working with some groups at UAMS and A-State, working to create trauma-informed learning environments or schools, and this is predominantly in the preschool setting. So that's me, and it's good to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we will have introduction by Carrie.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kerry Crawford. I am a licensed psychological examiner in independent practice. Currently work for Arkansas Rehabilitation Services, doing educational and intelligence testing for rehab counselors, as well as I'm an adjunct professor at Philander Smith College in the psychology department. And I'm glad to be part of the panel today.
We're glad to have you. This is a busy person, so I'm glad we were able to get you hooked in today. And then Erica, if you could introduce yourself for us.
Thank you, Tiffany. My name is Erica Mays, and I'm also a licensed psychological examiner, independent licensure. And I currently am employed through RISE Counseling and Diagnostics here in Little Rock. I work with children, primarily age 3 all the way up through high school. I do psychological evaluations. So I assess for ADHD, autism, learning disabilities. I've had a broad career, mostly working with children. That's my passion. So I'm happy to be here tonight.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And so, because we all know that this is a stressful time, one of our panelists may be jumping in a few minutes late. So when she gets in, we'll offer a few minutes for her to introduce herself as well. But we're going to go ahead and get started. Like I said, we don't have to say anything about how stressful the last year has been for people, for us as Americans, for us as Black Americans. We've had a lot of stress from the pandemic in general, from the racial violence that's going on, and Jim Crow 2.0 that's happening. And so I'm just wondering, from your perspective as mental health providers, how have you seen that all of this has been impacting emotional wellness in the community?
Kind of like where to start, right? Where to start, like, how? I think just at the very least, what I would just say, I don't even know if this is just the first thing that came to me, is that people's routines, connections, what worked for them to be emotionally well has been disrupted in a long-term chronic way, right? Because we talked about that at first, like a year ago. Obviously, people's routines were disrupted, but I think now we're seeing that happening like it's been happening for a long time. where people have been disconnected, especially the kids that I work with. I don't know, I've heard the word lonely so many times, like from, all across the age range. And I just think it's just this chronic sense of just continuing to feel disconnected, like even when they are at school, like still not feeling as connected because of having to be quarantined just randomly and their friends being quarantined, not being able to really, like in some schools, they have good safety precautions, they have to, but it only has them in certain groups throughout the day and only with a small number of children. And, so anyway, just feeling disconnected, lonely, we're social beings. So I think when that goes on for a long time, that starts to wear on everybody, from children to adults to parents to just everybody. So that's one of the first things I would say that I've noticed.
Yes.
I'll jump in with that and say another word I've heard a lot is tired. I'm just tired. I'm just exhausted. Don't have the energy to really want to do anything. Tired of all the trauma on television. Like Dr. Holmes says, tired of being at home, tired of not seeing my friends. And, just that compound situation I was thinking about. I think it was Maya Angelou. I may mispronounce the name. Did she write the poem, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings?
Yes.
Is that her?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people feel like a caged bird. They feel like they're in a cage. I'm in this environment. I'm caged up. I can't get out of this environment. I feel basically helpless to do anything other than what I have to do. And I can't do the things I like to do. So just a sense of tiredness, helplessness, frustration, a sense of anxiety, as far as just anxious about what's going on. When you're at home like we've been, you have a lot of TV time. And depending on what you're watching on TV, may either increase or decrease your stress and anxiety as you stay at home now. But I'll leave that for some other people to comment on too also.
Yes. I was going to say, just to add to that, I think there have been obviously feeling lonely and frustrated and increased anxiety, but I think just a wealth of emotions. It's almost like a roller coaster. We've been going through this for so long. And when we initially started, we thought it was going to be temporary, and then it just seemed to drag on and on and on. And here we are a year later, and we're still not quite out of the woods. And just when you think things may be getting back to a sense of normalcy, it's kind of uncertainty because we don't know what that new normalcy is going to be. We're thinking we're going to get back to what we think, but things are going to be different. So I think it's just a lot of anxiety about the unknown at this point.
And so as people are listening, and I thought about these words you guys were using, anxiety, uncertain, disconnected, lonely, tired. If people are starting to feel this, what should we be doing? So if I call my friends like, girl, I'm tired, what is it that I need to be doing with these feelings or with these emotions that I'm experiencing right now?
I think the first thing that come to me is awareness, right? Like, so that's part of self-care. Like when we think about that, is to first be aware. Because I honestly think, and I could say this for myself personally too, is that I think some elements of how this whole process, the dual pandemics and whatever, just COVID, all the racism, everything, just everything that is going on politically, socially, economically, like everything. I think sometimes we don't take enough time to realize, now, how is this really affecting me? Because some people it's clear, it's real concrete and tangible, like concretely, I lost my job. Like practical needs aren't met. But I think for some people, it's like we don't realize it, like every day is just a little bit more overwhelming than it was. It's just a little bit more stressful. It just makes every little thing just that much harder. And for those who are mental health professionals or healthcare professionals or serving people in any way, or faith leaders, right, or educators, that we feel like maybe we're pouring out more than what we were before, right? So I think first we have to be aware that this is really affecting me and this is weighing on me and taking a toll. So that's one thing I would say, be aware of that. Pay attention to how your body feels. If you're feeling more tightness, muscle tension in your body, more tired, just short with people, irritable, all of that. Just notice, what is my body telling me about how this is affecting me? What am I feeling? So just really name that, like, this is tired, this is stressed, this is overwhelmed, this is I'm burnt out, I have compassion fatigue, maybe. Like, that's what this is that I'm experiencing. And let me just first acknowledge that and be aware of that and validate, like, that makes sense that I'm feeling that way. So I think I just put all of that under the category first, like acknowledgement and awareness.
I like that,
And-
being aware, and it makes sense that I feel this way. I'm sorry, Carrie, I didn't mean to cut you off. I got excited.
Well, good. Right along with that, in becoming aware of it, acknowledging what you can and what you can't resolve in that. There's certain things you can see that you're dealing with once you say, okay, I don't like the fact that I can't go a lot of places I would like to go. I don't like the fact if I like movies, I can't go to the movie. But, since I know I can't do that, and that's some of my frustration or some of my anxiety, what can I do to help lessen that load or lighten that load? Can I find some other activity, some other thing I can do while I'm acknowledging where my areas are? What can I do to help relieve some of that? With understanding, one of the things I tell myself every day now is that I don't have a Superman uniform under my shirt. So I can see something, and that doesn't really mean I have the ability to actually resolve that thing. And just telling myself that, okay, Carrie, this is a mountain that you can't overcome, but you know what the mountain is, and really give yourself some satisfaction just acknowledging the fact you know where you are. So, and I think that helps a great deal with that too.
Just to add to that, I think it's also important that not only should we be self-aware and acknowledge that we can't solve everything, but give ourselves grace and understand that we can't solve everything. And as mental health professionals, like you said, Kyla, we find ourselves taking on, other people come to us for help, and we're taking that on and not maybe recognizing the impact that it's having on us. And so we just kind of push through. But it's important that we do take care of ourselves. And some of those things obviously are different now. There are some limitations in what we can do and not do. But the good thing is that sometimes it's given us pause for reflection. And some people are good at that and some aren't. And I can say I'm not. But I have definitely come to better know myself this last year. And I found that I have more strength than I thought I had. So I think if we all just take a minute to look at ourselves and what we can do differently, and it's small steps, doing something small every day. The weather's getting nicer, so being outside, soaking up some vitamin D, that will help. We can obviously try to social distance, but definitely try to get out and walk and enjoy some nature. If it's just walking around the office building where you are, or taking a walk in the park, getting some lunch and go sitting in the park, do something different, and you'll see that those little habits can make a difference.
Another thing I've seen people do, and I've learned how to do, and it's helping me some, is stretching. I'm waking up in the morning and just doing some basic upper body stretching, some lower body stretching. I'm not trying to become Hercules, anything like that, but I'm finding out, because some of the stress that you have causes your body to be tense, and you feel kind of tense and tight. And if you start stretching a little bit, I try to do 5 minutes when I wake up in the morning, try to do about 5 or 10 minutes worth of basic stretching before I go to bed. And that really helps also. I'd add in something else. My eating habits have gotten better. What you eat is really important. I kind of looked up some foods that help reduce stress, and it's kind of funny. Things that we as Black people really love. One of the first things that came up was greens. Now, I don't know how many of us don't like some greens, whether it's collards, mustard, or whatever. Green foods and spinach. They talked about berries, strawberries, and nuts. Having yourself something around that you can kind of feed your body, it's a natural system that helps cleanse your body and kind of distress your body, helps a whole lot too. They had yogurt on there, but I don't like yogurt, so I wasn't going to say much about that.
Oh. But Carrie, I like how you brought in a conversation about the body, right? And so what that made me think about is that And I'm going to put a little bit, this is just my personal hat on, okay? I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. And so my worldview is that we are a spirit, right? And we have a soul and we live in a body. So I think during a time like this, we have to be careful to balance all of that. So to pay attention to our bodies, right? So I think that that's great. Like, so for me, I enjoy like dancing and like praise dance and that kind of thing. So I've been doing more of that around the house. I'm like, just forget whatever. I want to dance, have my little flags and be in my house and do what I'm doing, right? And so that's part of what I'm doing for my body, and that feeds my spirit as well. So like for me, having that balance across all of those, like how am I feeding and nourishing my spirit, me as spirit, and then my soul, right? So that's our mind and our emotions. Like, what are we doing to feed ourselves in that way? And then also our body. What are we doing to take care of ourselves in all of those ways and make sure we have balance in that so that really we stay as well as possible psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, and in all of it.
Definitely.
I don't want to move far from that because I think you guys are giving some great examples of things that we can do tonight, tomorrow morning, to start really feeding our body and our spirit. So I'm wondering if whether there's some more that came to mind as other people were talking about, those things that we can put into our routine right now to start helping us feed our mind, our body, our spirit, and be able to better cope with the things that are going on around us.
Another thing comes to my mind real quickly is breathing.
Yeah.
Breathing, learning how to take some deep breaths. Once again, just controlling your breathing, having a silent moment and listening to your breathing, and taking just, I found out years ago that I tend to make a lot of real short breaths. I don't really take long, extended breaths. And back in the day when I was attending service and was background noise in the choir, background noise, one of the first things we did as choir members, we did breathing techniques. And I found out by the choir director taking us through those breathing techniques, not only did it, definitely improve the little ability to sing I had, but typically I felt so much better after we just done that 5 to 10 minute breathing exercises we do prior to starting rehearsal. So I started trying to implement that some more into my everyday life. And I like the breathing part. I like eating. I like what we talk about exercise. And because as we talk about these things that don't cost money. These are things you can do that's just not taken away from any kind of financial situation you may have and things like that. So I would throw in breathing. Breathing exercises help real well. Deep breathing.
Exactly. And, in along the lines of taking care of our body, it's really important that we hydrate, drink water. A lot of times we have a tendency to drink our calories, be that with soda or juice or wine or beer. It's important that we drink water. That's something, again, that's free that we should do. The measures vary, but you should drink, I've heard, at least half your body weight daily with water, that consumption. Or if not, at least anywhere between 48 to 64 ounces a day. And so that's 6 to 8 glasses of 8-ounce glasses of water. And you will notice a difference. I have been doing that more. I found myself, I thought I drank a lot of water. I gave up sodas a long time ago. So I don't drink sodas, but I don't drink as much as I thought I was. And I started running, and I find that I really need to make sure I'm hydrated. And so I was like, I'm not drinking near as much water. And you get used to it. Once you first start, you're going to be going to the bathroom more often. So just get used to that. But the more you drink, the better that gets. Your body gets used to it. And so you're just working those kidneys that you hadn't been using. So so that's really important. Making sure you stretch and focus on your breathing. And something else, in terms of making our body strong, which will in turn make our soul and spirit strong, some minor lifting, nothing heavy. We're not talking about large weights or anything like that, but just start with something easy, some canned goods, just 2 or 3, 10 reps, 15 minutes in each hand, and then as you get comfortable with that, kind of increase that to maybe a 2 or 3 pound weight. It doesn't take a lot at all, but that's going to build that strength as well, and build that muscle tone.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing that I would add, and I think Dr. Darshan Anderson-Reed is joining us here shortly, but I think what I would add is just idea of imagery. So that's what helps me. So when I do, I like how you all are talking about kind of breathing. But one of the things that's helpful for me is when I say imagery, like literally like imagining, and I'm going to tie this to what helps me spiritually, okay, is really imagining like the Spirit of God like filling me. So all the love. So let me use those words. That's what I mean by that. Like God's love, his mercy, his compassion, his grace, and his kindness is like filling me literally. Like I think about it like, okay, from my toes, my feet, and just think about all my muscle groups and body parts, and just like that, his love and mercy and kindness and compassion is filling me now, filling me all the way, taking away any anxiety, any feeling of overwhelming, kind of that I'm overwhelmed, that I'm stressed, and it's taking it away and filling me up with his grace and mercy and compassion, you know, and really that does like, okay, it really takes away some of the physical feelings that, at least for me, like when I feel the physical manifestations of anxiety and stress, it helps to relieve it, to really have that imagery where we imagine something, whether it's water, that's just what works for me, right? Is thinking about God's love. But for some people, it can be water, the sun. People who are really impacted by music, they really think about the words of the music, and that fills them up on the inside. So whatever it is that's helpful and calming and relaxing for them, they can think about covering them, imagining them, so that imagery can be very helpful.
And Kyle, I'm going to say this, I concur wholeheartedly, Dave, acknowledging the spiritual power that's higher than yourself. Sometimes just acknowledging the fact that God is in control, even when I feel like I am not, can really put you in a whole different mindset. And then giving it up to him and giving it all to him and looking toward that source for your continued strength and comfort. And with the expectation is going to happen, we're not talking about a blind faith or a blind grace. We're talking about grace, knowing that he's taking me through so many other parts of my life, and he's taken me through so many trials and tribulations in my life that if I trust in him, however you see him to be, if I trust in him, I trust in God, and acknowledge the fact that he does have the power and he is in control, even when I don't have to understand everything. I just have to trust in him and let my life, be like you say, beacon, and just relax and say, okay, I may not be driving the bus, but I don't have to. I know who's driving the bus. I can road may be bumpy sometimes, but he's driving the bus and everything's going to be fine.
I just want to do a little bit of an interruption in and make sure that we acknowledge Darshan joining us today. We want to give you a chance to introduce yourself, and then we were just talking together about things that we can practically do right now, tonight, tomorrow morning, that will help us with our emotional wellness, feed our mind, our body, our soul, help us cope with the stress. So if you want to introduce yourself and then jump in with any tips.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I have to be flexible because my life is very awkward in terms of with children in and out popping. So I apologize for having to join late. And I definitely want to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Darshan Reed. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Central Arkansas. And I currently serve as the student chair for the AABPP student committee. And so I am on this panel to speak more from the perspective of students and how they can help themselves, also to understand what it means to deal with the two different issues of racism and the pandemic. And I'm really talking from a student perspective. So I know you all have been, I think, talking about stress management. And so what I would speak from that for students would be to recognize your vulnerability. Everybody is dealing with something right now that we have no control over in most cases. And so students have to think about what that looks like for them. And what I would say practically do what you can do with what you can do, because we try to sometimes, I think students specifically try to take on more and try to prove themselves to be, I can handle this even when it's okay to not be okay, and not speak up. But I would definitely say one thing that not only students can do, but I do, I think you all were talking about music in terms of stress management. I literally will put my headphones on, I will listen to words of a song, and I will put it on repeat. Because if that's the only thing that'll make me feel better in that moment, that's what I will do. And I also have been finding myself giving myself more grace and understanding, because we give grace out to other people all the time, but we don't give it to ourselves. And so I think one thing the students also can remember is that you are human. Everybody is dealing with something. So find whatever it is that makes you happy. If that's music, I know meditation and a gratitude journal has been helpful for me as well. I actually received another gratitude journal from someone just because they thought I would need it. And I said, I appreciate it, because I want to remind myself of all the things I should be grateful for during this time. I'm grateful that I'm alive. If that's the only thing that I can say, that's enough for me to get through the rest of the day. So I would definitely say stress management, find something simple that's possible to do that doesn't require a lot of extra energy, and that possibly anything the extra make you stress. I know some people talk about exercise. Sometimes that's stressful because we don't always have the time nor the capacity to exercise. And some other things may be helpful for other people, but I just say keep it simple and recognize your vulnerability.
Wow, great. Those are great tips. Do anybody have anything else to add? Things that we can do now to manage our stress, to help our emotional health?
Yeah, I'll add to that again, like Dr. Reed was saying, know your limitations, and it's okay to step back. As an adjunct professor for Landry, I'm reminding students all the time that this is not the time to take a 15-hour or 18-hour semester. You're at home, you're doing virtual, and you're working, and you're helping your younger brother and sister with their own online courses, and you're away from the dormitory, you're away from your friends. You might want to consider taking fewer hours. You might want to consider kind of stepping back and be okay with that. It's okay to acknowledge the fact that I can't go full throttle right now. Matter of fact, it might be better to be on cruise control than to go full throttle. And another thing I've learned is helping people learn how to laugh. I laugh. I'm kind of comical anyway, but I learned how to laugh at myself at all times. And I think laughter really helps. And, just understanding how those things work. And I end with my one last thing, which I'm not trying to talk too much, is learning your triggers, learning where your triggers are. When I say trigger, for common sense stuff, learn what makes you click. I think we understand clicking, right? Personal triggers, and I know I've learned now what my frustration level is that I can be functional on. And I had to learn that. I had to learn how far can I go with something before I'm not going to be the person that I normally am, and be able to acknowledge that and say, okay, this is barometer. This is something that it's an indicator that I need to kind to address some things. So like what a car does, the car has the indicators on the dashboard, and when it's too hot, too cold, needs oil, needs gas, the indicator will come up, and we need to learn our indicators and be able to be willing to make those adjustments and be okay with that.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, we got a question that came in. And so this is a good one, because we were talking about, I think Kyla said earlier about disconnected, and we're feeling lonely and disconnected. So we have a question about dating via online platforms in the time of COVID. So people are trying to get connected with a love interest, a little boo bae love thing, and they want to know, do y'all have some tips on how to do this? And I got my pen out ready for whatever y'all say. So what tips can you offer for dating during the pandemic, particularly online dating?
You say whatever
Somebody else handle that?
No,
Well, how I mean, single people we have in this panel now. There's a few single people and some people that's not single. So I guess that means that the single people need to address that.
I'm gonna step out of this one.
Oh,
Okay,
wow.
I would say one simple thing is that don't put too much pressure on having to be in like a relationship. You can find that community or that connection through other relationships. And I know people want to be like seeking out that relationship, but I think sometimes we put too much pressure on things. And then that if it doesn't work out, then we are like maybe more sad or depressed about it. So I would just simply say, go into it with like an open mind, but don't put pressure on it that this has to be the person or this has to be the one. And remember, there's a lot of people out there looking for somebody too. So if the first person doesn't click, there's somebody else out there that may be still available. That's my input.
I've not done it. I'm single, by the way. That's not an advertisement. That's just a statement. I do talk to people. I do talk to other women and stuff on the phone and Zoom talk and stuff like that. But I've not really been, like you said, Dr. Reed, I'm not looking for that level of commitment. I'm looking more for a friend, someone to talk to. And I think that when you do go online, you need to know what you're looking for. I think establishing a friendship, then companionship, and then maybe a commitment later on as time goes on, be a good venue to do so. There are a lot of different online programs. They pop up all the time about, old folk dating, Black folk dating, whatever kind of folk you want to dating and stuff like that. So you do have a venue people to go through. But I would be cautious. People don't tend to be who they really are online, I find out. Sometimes who they are doing the Zoom dating and stuff like that may not be that person, who that person really is, whenever you do get a chance to meet them one-on-one. But I can acknowledge the fact I know 5 couples that actually got married based on online dating. My baby sister I love dearly is one of them. So it can work. I know that much. It can work. So I can't say it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. I'll say from my perspective, I mean, one of the things that I would say is just dating in general, right? Just to make sure that you kind of get your own self together, do your own inner work, do your own personal work. I know so what does that mean, right? Get to know yourself. A lot of the stuff that we've talked about, get to know yourself, know your negotiables, your non-negotiables, what's important to you, why are you pursuing a relationship anyway? Really looking at is this something I'm really ready for? Do I know what I want? What does my picker look like? Do I need to really, adjust my picker? Is my picker ending me up in the same type of relationship over and over? And why is that the case? So those types of things that would be important to look at anyway. I know I went through a lot with that, but anyway, just some pre-work. Would be good. But with the online dating specifically, I agree with Carrie. I remember reading not that long ago that pre-pandemic, at least 4 to 5 out of 10 relationships, like that's how people met. So basically more and more people are meeting online, period, right? Like that's just what's happening. That was before the pandemic. So that is definitely one of the most, the most common ways people are meeting, if not the most common way people are meeting these days, I'm sure. So I would just say, this is what I've heard some people recommend is, really do some research and asking around about which dating site to pick. Some people may say the paid ones are better than the free ones just because of the quality of the people that you would get. Be careful with the pictures that you put some pictures that are representative of you and all of you that people can actually see. And it's not, what's going on there? What's in their background? What's their bathroom looking like? Don't have distracting stuff going on. Have pictures that are actually flattering, that show all parts of you, that people would actually get to know you. So those are the type of things that I've seen. Let people know what's important to you and your values, and that you can be fun at the same time as well.
Yeah, and it's safe. Excuse me, Dr. Holmes. I found out that it's safe. If it's a real good safety factor there, because you're not putting yourself in harm's way, if I can put it like that. It's very safe. You get a chance to kind of, like we were saying, feel the person out without any commitment, like is he or she going to follow me when I go home, or this, that, and the other, or it's no money involved, which is really neat for the guy, you're not worried about, is he expecting me to pay for the meal, or do I have to pay for the meal? I remember going to a workshop, and one of the things online dating can help do is actually establish those rules and regulations before you have that first meeting. Okay, this is what I expect, so the expectations are already laid out. We're going to meet. I take my tab, you take your tab, just like we can meet somewhere, da. All those things are laid out. And I think it's a lot safer now, especially in today's environment, for a lot of ways, to meet online. So I hadn't tried it yet. Maybe next year.
Well, we're going to follow up with you, and we're going to have adventures of Carrie and online dating. That's going to be our next town hall. Y'all stay tuned.
Oh, no.
I will also add something what Darshan was saying about taking the pressure off of yourself. I heard somewhere that most people take about 60 to 70 dates online or matches online or talking to people online before they find someone that really matches with them. So take the pressure off and don't give up, because it may take a while. But we have another question that's on the other side of the spectrum. So we have some people who are trying to find a new boo and bae, and then some people who may be in some difficult situations with their current boo. So we know that this stress has led to some increases in domestic violence and some just increases in relationship issues in general. And so what are some tips that we can give about being in a relationship during the pandemic? And also, what do we do when that relationship turns abusive or turns harmful? Are there some resources available for that?
I would say just to, I'll give a stab at it. I think it's been an adjustment, just from my own perspective. But the pandemic, again, I guess, gives you pause for reflection. And so what I found was that you're with your family or significant other, probably spending more time than you would have otherwise, And so what you may find is that, especially if you've been in a relationship for a long time, that maybe you have differences now, you're different people, and when you've got a lot of stuff going on, that tends to distract you, and you're not paying any attention to those things. But when you're, having to quarantine together and you're spending all this time, you realize we don't like the same stuff. You're fighting over the TV remote because you want to watch something and they want to watch something else. And, it's just those kinds of things. I find that, definitely talking about it and increasing those lines of communication is one thing that you really want to do. Obviously, if the situation turns where it's harmful or violent or aggressive in some way, you definitely want to develop a plan so you can remove yourself from that situation. And I know a lot of people feel that they can't, or they're stuck. But again, you want to have someone that you can go to, a support person that you can confide in and develop a plan so that you can remove yourself from that, even if it's temporary, until you can get on your feet or, get into some therapy and kind of figure out what's going on. But you definitely want to remove yourself from any situation that's harmful. Even if you feel like you don't have any recourse, it's important that you develop a plan. There's help out there for women in these situations. And so definitely reach out.
I think related to that, and other people may have other resources, but it's just a couple of places that I've heard of that could be helpful. One is the Dorcas House, D as in dog, ORCAS. And so they have a website, and I think they have domestic violence shelters, and they have they have information that people can access. Okay. And another one is called Women and Children First. They look like they have a hotline. They have all types of resources, all types of services that they provide to women and children. They also have I believe they have a Facebook page, and they certainly have a website. Their hotline is 1-800-332-4443, 1-800-332-4443, and that's Women and Children First. And I believe they have a shelter as well and a range of services that they offer to people.
And I want to add too, just kind of to say that this is not just a gender issue for women. Men are abused by women, and every other relationship can have abuse, domestic violence in general, parents to children. So there's a lot that we have to consider during the pandemic, because families are having to be together for longer periods of time. Some children who were going to school, they were safer at school because they have resources and counselors and people who are looking out for them. And so sometimes that may be cut off during these extended periods where school may be virtual or you may not have those connections. But those people at those schools are still available. And I definitely would say, even for college students, you have a counseling center that most all institutions have available to students that they can reach out. And there's usually some type of peer programs that have support groups as well, because I know our counseling center at UCA has been putting on boot camps for students that deal with domestic violence, as well as deal with mental health issues. So I would definitely, speaking from just for students, to reach out to those resources that are already available to you. And then just to remember that it is not just a gender issue. I know there could be violence or abuse that comes in different forms. So it may be more prevalent for women to be physically or verbally abused, but men are also dealing with some type of abuse as well. And so they need to seek help. And it's not something that you should be silent about just because our society says that men should not show their emotions or they may not be able to speak out as much, but it still needs to be an issue that's addressed.
Yeah, I agree with you that, Darshan. I have an opportunity to talk to some men on a regular basis when I do mental health work for my agency. And there are a lot of men now who've lost their jobs, and the wife is the one that's working. And the self-abuse they put on themselves about not being a man anymore, and plus several other women sometimes can be very verbally abusive and somewhat abrasive about, well, you ain't bringing no bread in, you ain't no man, you ain't this, you ain't that. And it really, really whacks hard on the guy's ego. And I would just say to that, it's okay to acknowledge the fact that I'm hurting. I think that where we look at women being more physically abused, a lot of times I think the abuse on the man's side is more emotional abuse. And sometimes physical too. I've known some men that got beaten up a time or two. We won't go into that. And it's really important to acknowledge that. And it's not your fault. I think the thing, a lot of times people think, what am I doing? You don't blame yourself for what you're going through. I like what Erica said, you get an escape plan, you find a plan of where you can get yourself and your children safe. That's mostly important. And the venue, and don't blame yourself. Sometimes you feel like as a victim, you've done something to deserve that. And that's very seldom true. That's very seldom true at all. So don't view yourself as being justifiably being abused. Acknowledge the fact that you are being abused and take care of yourself the best you can. But seek out therapy or help. You need to get away from the situation. It's not going to get much better. And it's higher now because of COVID. If you look at the numbers, divorce rate is higher, abusive situations is higher. A lot of things are higher now, like I think it was already said, because we're spending more time together. And for those couples, sometimes it's just increased the tension that was in the home in the first place. So, and it's really can be a really, really stressful situation.
I like how you said, Carrie, it's probably not going to get better. And so you have to look for ways to get out. So if you're in a domestic violence situation, or where you're experiencing emotional or physical, financial abuse, it's probably not going to get better. And there's some resources available that Kyla mentioned that you can use and reach out to in order to get help, to get that escape plan developed and to get out.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be, I'm sorry, I'm going to say this real quick. it's sort of like a honeymoon period. I'm gonna put it like that. Sometimes when something goes on that's kind of abusive, either physically and emotionally in a situation, a relationship, it may be a honeymoon period. After that occurs, and I'm gonna take you out to eat. I'm gonna do something for you. This period of I'm really sorry I did that, but it's a very cyclic situation. And right after that honeymoon, you're gonna be right back to ground zero. So I would say that understand how the routine is going, how the cycle is going, and try to, like say, have an escape plan. Hopefully, doing one of those safe periods in the cycle where you don't have to reoccur one of those abusive cycles before it happens again.
Great tips. We're getting a little bit close to the end of our time. I know we got a lot of other things to talk about, but another question that came in specifically is talking about grief. And so we've seen a lot of grief, loss of family members, but also just loss of, opportunities, loss of connections. So a lot of people are grieving right now. And they said, how can we best support families during COVID that are dealing with grief?
A lot of times, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the best things that you can do for someone is just to be present in whatever way they need you to be. Because I know for me personally, we have lost, I think, 3 family members already from COVID. And also just having so many friends that have lost so many people. Like, so it's not just your personal loss, but yours, like community and family loss, when you have to interact with people who are dealing with it while you're dealing with it as well. And so the best thing that I could suggest is that just be present for them, whatever way. I think one of the simplest things someone did was just call and say, I don't know what to say, but whatever I can do to be there for you, I am. And just hearing that somebody cares, because we just talked about how isolated and how cut off we may feel during this time, but just knowing that even during this time, people are still thinking about you, they're still concerned about you, and they're still reaching out to you. I think that means a lot. And I've definitely taken more to the old-fashioned writing people cards. I love words of affirmation, encouragement. So I've been sending more like greeting cards and specific sympathy cards than I probably sent in my entire lifetime. But I take every opportunity to handwrite them, and I pick every single word. I put scriptures in them just so that person knows that this is customized, it's specifically for you. I want you to know that I'm here for you. And even just this past weekend, it was a very spur of the moment, but one of my friends, she's grieving, and I literally jumped in the car and drove a couple hours just to be by her side. And she said that meant the world to her. So I think whatever way you can be present for somebody, do just that, because we don't always have the capacity to maybe send them a meal or cook them. I know I don't cook, but if I can do something else for you and I can be there for you, I will definitely do so. So I just say, take whatever you can and be there for somebody in whatever way you can.
I would definitely like to just
Go ahead.
I just kind of just say that same thing that Darshan. I love that what you're saying, Darshan. And I would just say for parents who are dealing with maybe how to talk to their children about it, like if they lost a grandparent or lost a loved one, I think that very same thing that you're saying, really being there. And I mean, accessing resources. There are some resources that you could probably Google, but for one website, the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, nctsn.org. They have a lot of good information, and some of it is really geared towards parents, some it's geared towards educators about how to talk to children about very difficult topics. So, and it really outlines very specifically, and some they even do it by age group, about just how you can be there, how you can just have simple, concrete, helpful conversations with children, helping them understand death, helping them understand what it means and what it doesn't mean. Because sometimes they may come away from a situation, especially with COVID, right? Like I had a patient who thought she was around her grandmother for about maybe a few weeks before she died from COVID, and she thought it was her fault because she hugged her. and she was in contact with her, and she thought that, oh, maybe I did come into contact with somebody, but because of the way she was working with it in her mind, that was adding to the complexity and trauma and hurt of the grief. It was adding to it, right? So, but just creating that space to really physically be there, even because it's hard, because parents sometimes going through their own grief. So it can be tremendously hard to support a child in grief when you're grieving, right? So reach out for support. I've been encouraging parents, get your own support, right? Please, if you feel like you don't have the capacity to even think through how to support your child during grief, reach out to a counselor or a therapist to help you walk through that and think about how to do that during a very difficult time.
Yes. Just to add to that, another resource that's really good that I give out to parents a lot, and it covers really it's kidshealth.org. So kidshealth.org, but it's a website and it's geared for parents or professionals. And even there's a site for like teenagers, older adolescents, but you can get information regarding kids' health related to their physical, emotional, behavioral health. And there are a lot of good resources about how to talk to kids about various things. And it even breaks it down in terms of the age level and development of the child in terms of making it basic and concrete so they understand. But just educating ourselves about the process of grief. I mean, there are stages of grief and we have to know what they are and kind of know that we have to work through them. It's just because a certain amount of time has passed doesn't mean you should be over it, because everyone grieves differently, and understanding that two people aren't going to grieve the same way. And so it's understanding that it's a process and we all have to go through the process and we have to go through every stage. And you may cycle through some of the stages and go back and forth and be depressed and angry and in shock and, before you get to that acceptance and then the hope and understanding. So it's important that you just kind of be familiar with those stages and know where you are and know that you just have to work through it. And more or less, it just takes time. And there's no crystal ball in terms of how long that'll be because everybody's different, but understanding that and that self-awareness, I think, is going to be the key.
Yeah.
So I know that we have a lot of great tips, and I know I really do hate it, but I want to make sure that we stay within our time. And so we're at 7:22. So hold on to your tips. I'm gonna give you a chance to say your last thing in just a minute. But both Kyla and Erica brought up something important about seeking out support from professional therapists. I want to make sure that everyone knows that our organization has a list of mental health professionals available here in Central Arkansas, and I believe across the state. There may be a few other ones there. So if you have listened to this and you're hearing these tips and you say, I've tried all of this and I still need some help, or I just need someone to support and walk with me through these difficult times, please go to our Facebook page and you will see that directory of mental health providers that you can reach out to and get connected to get some help. And so again, let me also thank you guys for taking time out of your schedule to be with us. I appreciate it. I know our listeners and viewers appreciate it as well. But we want to make sure that we leave everyone with our last tip, our last thing that we want to say. So I hope that whatever I cut you off on about grief, you're holding it in and you're going to find a way to weave it in right now. But what's that thing that you want people to take away from our conversation today?
Well, I will jump in there because as a researcher and as a person looking at grief from not just family, friends, and people, but grief from opportunities, grief from our goals not being met, I would definitely say realize that when something is blocked, I would say, or stopped temporarily, that doesn't mean it's over or it ends. We can take a break from a goal and we can definitely pick it back up. And just like Mr. Carey was saying earlier, students, just because your semester got off the rails, maybe last year or this year, that doesn't mean you are not going to graduate. That does not mean that you're not going to be successful. It doesn't mean it's the end of everything. So don't catastrophize everything in this moment. We have to, again, take it, give ourselves some grace, but realize that those opportunities may come, and they may come in a different form. And we just have to look for where that opportunity may exist in the future, and not just look at it as a failure right now, because it's okay for us to take a break or for us to have to pause. It doesn't mean that it's over. So that's what I would say.
I would say on grief that number one, the grief is a natural part of life. That's one way to look at it. And when I grieve over somebody or something, that means I had some care, I had some some emotion attached to it, some love to it, and so it's natural to feel that loss. And so never try to think that you're less of a person because you are grieving. That is something that you should go through. And one of the things I like that you also said, Dr. Reed, I'm getting ready to send some letters to somebody, some friends I had who lost their mothers from last Mother's Day and this Mother's Day. So this will be the first Mother's Day they'll be experiencing coming up. And happy Mother's Day, mothers. That they're not going to have their mother around. And sometimes, like you said, that letter, that phone call, just acknowledging the fact that I know that it may be difficult for you during this holiday. However, my thoughts are with you, my prayers are with you, and I'm just hoping that you will continue on. So it's an ongoing process, so you have to, it's continued support and not just a temporary support when someone's going through grief.
Right.
I was going to say, just to add to that, finish up about the grief, it's important to know that people that have died in this past year, there may be some guilty feelings because we didn't honor our loved one or our friend in the way that we wanted to, because things were so limited. And so, again, it's important that we understand that this is something temporary and it's going to pass, but give ourselves grace and understand that, things, I believe things happen for a reason, and we may not always understand what the reason is right now, but there is a plan. And so just know that when the time comes, you will be able to honor that person in the way that you feel that they deserve. And know that, they're being taken care of and you're still being held. And surround yourself with your support system. It's important that we have a support system that network of individuals that we can turn to, be it your best friend or family, or it may be people you work with or other community, but we all need a support system or that community, so that when we have something going on or we're feeling tired or frustrated or we're grieving, that we can turn to and seek help. And those are the people that are going to support you and be with you through this.
And I think the thing that I'd like to add, just a word here, would be connection, and I think the way I would like to talk about it is, one is spiritual connection. So us as kind of African and Black people, right? Maybe not everybody, but I know a lot of people in the African and Black community, that some level of spirituality is important. So I would say some form of spiritual connection that keeps you grounded in hope and love and grace and mercy, and just something that brings you some spiritual connection and nourishment, right? So connecting, whether you call it the universe, the creator, the transcendent God, whatever, but just connect in a way that fills you, where you truly feel a sense of connection, even when you're physically by yourself, that you still feel connected and you don't feel alone during a time like this. So I would say spiritual connection, and then also just connection in your soul. So I think Erica was touching on it. So things that feed your soul. So connecting with people socially, whatever way you can do it. Carrie said earlier, laughing. I've been watching during this week. I probably found every comedy I could find, just comedy, something that just brings some laughter. And what do they say? It's good medicine for the soul, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just connection, spiritual connection, and something where we feel satisfied and connected in our souls.
Again, let me thank you all for joining us today. I told everybody at the beginning we were going to get gems dropped, and they should make sure they had their paper and pen ready. And so I hope that they heeded my advice and was able to take down everything that you said. Again, this was about Mental Health Awareness Month, and we at AABPP are going to practice what we preach. So we'll be taking a brief break over the summer to do some self-care, and we will be back in the fall with our town hall series, where we'll be giving more information about how you can improve your mental health and also how you can support your emotional wellness through all the things that we talked about today. So thank you again for watching. Thank our panelists for being a part, and good night.
Good night.